This here is sample number 5, known as the lap seam, and I will guide you now through the steps. So basically the process for this one is almost exactly the same as a plain seam. So you cut out the fabric, you put 2 pieces together, you do a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then when you have these flaps on the back, instead of ironing them open and flat, you're actually just going to iron them to one side. And it does not matter which side you choose. And so once you have done that, you'll end up with something like this. So as you can see, both flaps have been ironed to one side. Please excuse the green, trying to conserve fabric here. And so it'll look the same from the front for both the sample 4 and sample 5, but sample 4 just got ironed open. And the next step on this one, after ironing them to one side, is you are going to do 2 stitch lines. So, as you can see on the back here, how it's fraying on the edge, that is because, this was the edge of the flaps. Okay, so after you have ironed the flaps to one side, make sure that the flaps are on the side where you are going to be doing the sewing, because the whole point is that you're going to be sewing these flaps, flat. Otherwise, if we did the sewing over here, then the flaps would still, be loose on the back. So that's not what we want. You are going to start by doing a line that is about inner width of the presser foot away from the original stitch line. So here's the original stitch line, and so basically it would be something like, I'm hoping it's visible, something like that. So this here, you can see that the original stitch line connecting these pieces together was in there. Did the first line next to the original sew line, inner width of the presser foot, so you can use the original, fold line there as your guide. And then you're going to do about, it's about 1/4 inch, yes, 1/4 inch over, and then you're going to do another line. And that should catch the rest of the seam under here. So you see it just barely stops before the edge. So again, sew the 2 pieces together like sample number 4, the plain seam. Then after you've sewn the pieces together, you will iron the flaps to one side. Then when you go back to the front, inner width of the presser foot, you're going to sew along right next to the original seam line. Then step 2, you're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from that line, using that first line as a guide. Both lines should catch this flap on the back. So make sure the sewing you're doing is on the side where the flaps have been folded. So that is how you do a lap seam. So it should look nice and clean on the front, and still pretty clean, but you'll probably have a little bit of fraying on the edge on the back. And you'll use a plain stitch, back stitching it at the beginning and the end, and the default 2.4 stitch length.